In a world of most Linux users, some guys decided to get together and make a podcast. We are the Linux Lads. Hi, my name is Connor, and welcome to the Linux Lads podcast.
My name is Shane.
My name is Mike.
And so this week, we've been news to get through, and then there's a bit of a rant, a bit of a discussion to get into after that. But let's first get the news out of the way. So the first bit of news, IBM to acquire Red Hat, completely changing the cloud landscape and becoming the world's number one hybrid cloud provider. Mike, I think you added this one to the show notes. Have you had a bit of read of this article?
Yeah, I have. It's obviously a massive bombshell because $34 billion, the number one Linux company in the world, and, well, actually at least the richest one, and also the behemoth of IBM. This makes it obviously a massive piece of news. It's primarily obviously targeted at them having dominance in what they call hybrid cloud, which is like private cloud and public clouds together. And they want to outdo Google and Amazon and whoever, so that's why they are getting together to be stronger. I think for us, the most important thing is that that article mentioned a lot of time things like open source and open governance for the Red Hat project, which is becoming part of IBM. So as long as they don't kill the openness of Red Hat, and as long as things like Fedora, CentOS, and other things that and GNOME, for example, that basically depend on Red Hat, are still doing fine, then I'm perfectly okay with this.
For me, my first take on this article is, when reading down through it, is one, it's 34 billion with a B, just so they can do all Dr. Evil on it and go, $34 billion or whatever it is. And also the fact that they're like, guys, we've been working together for the past 18 or 20 years. We know what the open source landscape is like. Rest assured, we're not Oracle, and we're not going to fuck this up.
Yeah, it's basically
my take on that.
Yeah, pretty much like the like, it's in IBM's best interest because they've never really been the cool consumer tech guys in the industry. They've always been the boring business stuff. So I guess it makes sense for them to it's a good acquisition for them, I would say, because I was reading through that article, and they basically, like, Red Hat will remain a division or something like that. Like, they'll be within IBM, but they won't be rebranded or anything like that. So hopefully, as Mike said, hopefully they kind of preserve the openness and the community aspect, and they don't go full commercial on it. Yeah, I don't know. I struggle to say if it's good or bad news. I don't really know. It's early days.
I'm fairly neutral on it myself. It's not like when we heard about the Oracle way back when Oracle acquired Sun, and we're going to go, we know where this is going. Like, Sun's time is over, and boy, were we right. It's the case of, we don't know that this is going to be bad. I'm the case of this. I'm kind of neutral on this. But IBM are a big tech company. I'm sure they know what direction will be good for growing their new division, which is Red Hat, which is keep on side with the open source community, keep on side with everything open, which is what Red Hat is known for. Otherwise, Red Hat enterprise customers will probably just move away en masse, which, when you acquire a company, you definitely do not want.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tremendous success story. I mean, you start building cashiers, and 100 years later you can afford to buy a Red Hat. That's tremendous. Well done. Well done, IBM.
Time we moved on from that, but yeah, it's an interesting one to watch. In other news, Canonical, even though they kind of in the latest version, I don't know if it was I think it was introduced in 1804, where a pop-up will come up when you install it and say, listen, do you want to send us some spare specifications about your computer, what hardware you're running, whether it's an Intel CPU, AMD CPU, whether you're running an AMD GPU or an NVIDIA GPU, that sort of thing. Just so that, and what kind of screen resolution do you have? Do you have a 1080p screen? Do you have a 720p screen? Those kind of very basic metrics, and it was completely opt-in. So that was a while ago. That was about 6 months ago. Now they launched a website that actually visually represent all of this information, and I think it's actually dynamic. In other words, if you click on it a week from now, the information that you see might be different from when you clicked on it today, rather than them just putting up like a static image of their stats. But it's interesting enough, and it was interesting to find out what actually screen resolutions people are using. There was quite a lot of low screen resolutions, but when people were talking about that in the various Telegram groups, I think Alan Pope came on and said that's because people are just loading it up in a virtual machine, so that's the reason why it has such a low screen resolution, which I suppose that makes sense. Not as many 4K monitors as they might have thought, but again, that's good if it means that one way, if they found out that 30 to 40% of their users are using 4K monitors, maybe they should put more development resources into high DPI compatibility. Or, as they've found out, seems to be with the usage statistics at the moment, is quite few people have 4K monitors. So maybe they should reallocate some of the development resources accordingly. What are you guys' thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, my only thing is that I would like to hear some actual numbers rather than just percentages, because, I would like to know how many people there are actually installing Ubuntu in millions or hundreds of thousands or whatever. But I understand that might be information that Canonical maybe will never want to divulge. For whatever reasons. So otherwise, yeah, it's any piece of information that we have about the Linux user base or even just Ubuntu user base is good, because it's not something you can get tracked by, but it is something that can help Canonical make a better Ubuntu, and it can help maybe even hardware manufacturers make it work better. Knowledge is good. Yeah, basically, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. When it comes to open source projects, I always tend to opt into these type of things, because I find that obviously there's an element of trust. I trust these companies more than a for-profit company. I know Canonical is for-profit, but they're different. Like, it's in their best interest to keep the trust with their community, keep the trust with their users, because, like, let's face it, like any open source project or Linux distro you use, trust is a key factor when you're using that software. So if they ask me for details on my system, some harmless anonymized data, then yeah, sure, fine. If it helps improve the project, then why not?
Yeah, certainly. I'd be 100% in agreement. Again, don't repeat myself, but it does give the very good hardware metrics, and also it seems to be that the majority, I think about 2/3 of people actually did opt in, because it was a case of opting in rather than opting out. Or there was a toggle. I think it was the toggle might have been automatically selected, but like it's quite clear to say, deselect this if you don't want to be opted in, then click next or whatever. And I think only about 1/3 of people actually actively did that. So I think that's is quite good. So the next bit of news, a friend of the show, Martin Wimpress, has been working away on his GPD Pocket2, which, and the GPD Pocket2, if you think about it, is a very, very compact, almost laptop-like device from a Chinese manufacturer, and they've called themselves Gamepad Digital, or GPD for short, and essentially is really kind of very kind of handheld, as in you be quite cramped if you're typing on with two hands, but it's more kind of thumb typing. But it's by default comes with Windows, but he's Martin Wimpress has been working his magic, and he's got the latest Ubuntu Mate 1810 as an officially tailored image for the GPD Pocket and the GPD Pocket2. Pocket 2, needless to say, just has better internals, faster processor, and so on. But little tweaks like it knows exactly what screen resolution and what scaling to use, and also I think the GPD Pocket, what they use is a tablet screen, and they just rotate it. So some operating systems, if the drivers are not quite right, then you'd be viewing things 90 degrees rotated the wrong direction, because it's meant vertical rather than landscape, and those little tweaks Martin Wimpress has just done automatically. So now all the videos that I've seen of it, it seems to work with the GPD Pocket2 perfectly okay.
I mean, brilliant. It's great. Every piece of hardware that works with Linux is great, and if it's something that is tailored to the hardware so that people who use it have a great experience, especially on a gaming device, which I understand this kind of is.
It's more of a general purpose tablet.
I mean, for people,
I'm sure you can game on it as well.
For people of my generation, it's like the Nokia 9910 communicator.
I remember that. Never used one, but I remember when that came out.
So it's great, and Ubuntu Mate is amazing. I always use Ubuntu Mate on any of my Raspberry Pis if I need to if I want a graphical user interface on it, and I mean, it's brilliant and I use it on this laptop that I'm recording on, or it's my wife's laptop, and it's just great that Martin Wimpress has got the energy and and whatever is needed to make this work.
Yeah, it's nice that even though he's the primary Ubuntu Mate developer, is the kind of thing of there's this weird quirky device that I've backed on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or something like that, which I believe is the GPD model of how they release their devices, how they raise their revenue, and say, okay, there's this quirky device just kind of sitting on my desk. I might as well, because I'm the Ubuntu Mate maintainer or the lead developer or whatever his title is, and he just says, there's this device lying around. I'm going to experiment with this on my weekend or in my spare time, in my evenings or something, see if I can get this to work. And then turns out he actually could get it to work, and he's like, okay, this is actually quite stable. So I'll actually officially up on their webpage say, of this tailored image, you can download the ISO specifically for this device. The same thing with, as you mentioned, the Raspberry Pi. He does have Raspberry Pi images up there. You can just say, okay, I'll run a Raspberry Pi, download the ISO, and then you go. So it's kind of same base, but little tweaks here and there, just like niceties that work for that specific hardware. So in other news, we have something that was mentioned from Joey Fallon. So, is in relation to Mozilla have announced that they on their blog they have just general information about VPN and how to become more secure. But I think the interesting thing in this news is they're actually recommending a specific VPN, Proton VPN, and I think they're getting some kind of revenue sharing model. So, for example, if you use their link, which they will be pushing, I think Mozilla get a bit of kickback on that. I don't think Mozilla is hurting for money at the moment. I think they've hundreds of millions that they've been spending on different projects, and so I don't think they're hurting for money at the moment. But I think it's a way of diversifying their revenue streams and not just relying on one singular source, and maybe maybe trying to build up partnerships and maybe trying to future-proof their revenue streams. So I don't think they're hurting for money at the moment. I think this is more the long term of saying, we may not have this hundreds of millions in our bank at the in the future state. Maybe some of these partnerships will come into fruition long term, as in 5 years time or whatever. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think people might be saying that Mozilla should be non-profit and not try to make money, but then how would they be able to ever support making a browser, obviously? And I understand the fact that they have to choose commercial partnerships because people just won't pay for the browser. And I'm glad that they make very, I'd say, sane and interesting decisions about who to partner up with. So for me, Proton is a company that has credentials in security. I do have I use their email in a limited way, and I think that offering users VPN, even though you have to pay for it, is definitely another great idea. And it's not some kind of an invasive service. Like, it's not some massive ad with tracking. It's the opposite. If you don't like it, you don't have to sign up for it. So to me, this is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've been following Proton Mail and VPN kind of as a company from the start. I'm a Proton Mail customer. I signed up for the paid service and everything, so it just makes sense. Mozilla Firefox and Proton VPN, like I'm not sure the specifics of how that would work, but if that's integrated directly into the browser, that could be pretty sweet. Like that's like that because that's my problem with VPNs on Linux, is that I just find them too much of a pain in the arse to set up. Basically, I don't really want, I want a very simple solution. I want a browser extension that I can just click on or off, change country, etc., etc. Like, I don't want to have to faff about with it for an hour. Like, so if they can offer me something like that, then excellent.
From the screenshots on the article, it seems to be that I don't think it'll be integrated by default, obviously, because it's a paid for service. They can't really. It can't be the case of you download Firefox and automatically they already have Proton VPN in-baked into the browser. I think it's the case of there might be a pop-up prompt on your hamburger menu up to the top right or something like that when you click on it and saying, do you want to remain secure? Are you interested in a VPN? A little ad kind of thing. Or we recommend Proton VPN. And then if you click on that link, then it might be the case of that. Mike, you have something to say?
Yeah, I think this is going to be as at first offered to a limited amount of Firefox users. As an experiment, and I think they've done some kind of experiments in the past when they don't know if something is going to pan out well. So they first started with a small group, and if it doesn't work, they abandon it. But yeah, so it's not going to be for everyone, at least not from the beginning.
On this next bit of news is something that I think we should cover, but I think cover briefly, is just the whole Solus controversy. So the Solus controversy is that the lead developer, Ike Doherty, seemed to be going through a bit of a transition period. He was changing, moving country and so on. So for a while it was okay. It was up to the rest of the guys, and the rest of the guys were thinking everything's fine. And some members of the community weren't exactly believing, or I wouldn't say believing, but trusting that they were telling the whole truth. Anyway, it's something that we're going to lightly mention, just the fact we have there's a very extensive article. So if you're interested, there's an article with a transcript and also an audio recording of it. So if people want to go into this more in depth, but I've just briefly mentioned that the article was released, and it's some quite interesting reading if you're so inclined. Have you guys been reading this article?
Yeah, I've read it. it's just to me this kind of renewed the faith in the project, because as you said, there have been some questions that people have been asking, like, do you guys have access to your servers? Has IT communicated what's going on? And this blog post explains everything, and it also shows how passionate the people who are currently making Solus are, at least to me. So I think if anybody is losing, if any of our listeners are using Solus, definitely worth reading or listening to the post they made. And it's, at least to me, I'm confident that Solus is here to stay.
Yeah. I was just like, I didn't actually read. I briefly skimmed through the article, and I haven't listened to the audio recording they posted. But yeah, it's nice to see these projects coming out and saying, you know, giving us the truth about what's happening, because like in any open source or Linux project, like we know it's always very transparent. It's always very like in many cases, a lot of the people involved or a lot of the fans of the project will know each other personally. Like there's an awful lot of personalities and like real world friendships and acquaintances involved. So it's you know, you don't want to delve too deeply into someone's personal life, but yeah, at the same time, it's good that they've gotten out ahead of this, and they're putting all their cards on the table, and that the project can still continue. So I think that's kind of a testament to any open source project and kind of the philosophy everyone has in these projects.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There has been cases where I believe was it the. It was definitely the case of in the Python lead developer, where he just says, "Listen, so long, guys, and thanks for all the fish." But it wasn't the case of just completely cutting cords. It was the case of, "Listen, guys, I'm done, but somebody else can take over the project." But he didn't exactly name a successor. But there is the what if the lead guy gets hit by a bus? Case of, well, he has all the server passwords, he has access to the Twitter and all that, so on and so forth, so the access to the GitHub. And I think it was the case of in the case of Solus, where they actually do had to set up a separate domain and rehost it, because during the transition, I don't think they had full access to all of it. Anyway, it is explained in the article, so I don't want to get into it too much. But I just in the general sense, it is good to have a backup plan, just in case. Again, it's the bus factor of what rather than having the main guy doing absolutely everything and him having all the passwords. What if that guy gets hit by a bus? It's the hit by a bus factor. So it's good that they're kind of diversifying, and some of the other guys who seem to be taking on more responsibilities, not just Ike. But again, it's all explained in the article. Now, moving on, the next bit of news I'm actually really interested in, which is Pine64 is developing a Linux smartphone. So for people who are sick of iOS, for people who are sick of Android and are looking for an alternative, this could be a possible alternative for you, as based on the Pine 64 board, which I believe is just a slightly more powerful version of a kind of a tinkering board, just like a Raspberry Pi or something like that, but it's based off the Pine 64. So it's another alternative, as well as the Librem phone, which may or may not come out. But that's an interesting one to keep an eye on. But this is about the Pine 64. So Mike, I believe you added this article in.
Yeah, because I'm waiting for this, like Desert for Rain or something, because basically the Librem 5 project, which is going to be the phone, it got crowdfunded. It's going to be it was going to be the only phone that we knew of that was going around Linux, and it was going to run GNOME, and it was going to be about $600 to $700 as far as we know, to be released some point next year. Now, this Pine 64 is something a bit more, at least for me, a bit better because it's not going to cost $600, but they say they are aiming for the basic 2 gig of RAM, 16 gigabit of storage configuration to be about 100, and it's going to run Plasma Mobile out of the box. I think I'm not sure about this, but I think that Jonathan Riddle, the guy who's the lead developer on KDE Neon, is involved in this somehow. I'm not sure about it, but that would add an extra credibility. Also, as you said, the Pine 64, they are a company that has been around for a while. They sell like little Raspberry Pis, and they also sell laptops. The Pinebook 11-inch and Pinebook 14-inch, and I'm actually getting the Pinebook 11-inch for Christmas, provided. Yeah, and that laptop is basically it's an ARM laptop running Linux. They tested again KDE Neon. It runs fine, people say, and it's $100. I mean, as Joe Resington, who also ordered one, keeps saying, is $100 price plus packaging, plus sending, plus import taxes. But it's a very low cost computer. And what I've seen on YouTube, it's well worth it. So if these people make a phone, I can't say anything, but that's a good
certainly,
thing.
As you're saying, about it's $99 or $100, but even after all the import duties and all the shipping and blah 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 blah, even if it works out at €150 rather than €100, then that's certainly a very affordable device.
Yeah, I like that we're seeing an awful lot more of these type of projects come out. Like I was pretty excited about the Librem, but the delivery date's being pushed back a little bit, so that was kind of our one last hope. But like, it's good that we like that this tech, like that's just the nature of technology. Like it's becoming more and more accessible to smaller companies. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of these guys coming out with cheaper alternatives, more indie kind of tech companies doing their own thing, and that the means of production and the technology has become far more accessible now. So it's an exciting time. It's like I don't think like the likes of Librem or Pine 64 are gonna like dethrone Apple or Google but like they at least it gives people another option. Like, so us, tinfoil hat wearing open source geeks can have a phone that is sort of is closer to our ideal.
Or just people who like their phones actually working.
Burn.
But I'd love to have a phone that was just completely like open and everything, and you don't have to worry about breaking the thing every time you want to do something new or install some new software. Like
that's very true. Yeah,
like I just want a fucking piece of technology I can take apart and see how it works, and I want to be able to do cool shit with it. Like I don't like this limiting sort of trend that you have with phones nowadays. Like Android used to be that guy, used to be that cool open phone that you could customize and do whatever you like with, but now it's just gone the same way as iOS.
Yeah, for people who are running and are a phone that normally runs Android, there is I've drawn a complete blank. Lineage, that's the Lineage OS. There is Lineage OS, which I have run on previous phones. Not currently running it on my current phone, but I have run it on previous phones. Lineage OS is a great project, and I think it's Replicant OS, where it's the case of if you for people who are familiar with the free software movement and the whole of, there should be absolutely no proprietary blobs or anything like that. Replicant OS, I think, is essentially that, where it's taking Android but completely removing anything that's proprietary. So if you want to be as open source as humanly possible while running on an Android device, I think is Replicant OS. But I don't think their hardware compatibility list, I don't think is very extensive, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think what it was running on was like Galaxy S3 and maybe some few other phones, and even Lineage is not great when it comes to hardware coverage because they have like OnePlus devices. They have some high-end Samsungs, I think.
I love the
and
Nexus,
LGs.
the Nexus devices.
But if you just want to buy a phone,
with the Nexus devices as well.
yeah, but the Nexus devices are getting old, and the replacement, what is it, the Google Pixel devices, they cost hundreds, even thousands of euros, and so does everything else. If you just want to buy a good phone for 200 euros, you might not be able to get a new device like this year's device so that it's covered by warranty and still get Lineage working on it. So that's why I'm looking forward for a cheap, good Linux unlimited phone, basically.
Certainly no problems whatsoever with the whole philosophy behind it, of the whole thing of, you can pick up a device for 200 or 300 euro, brand new, shipped to you, so on and so forth, and it's running bare stock Linux, whether it's probably going to be Debian based or something very similar, and then having the KDE Plasma mobile interface on top of it, which it is a bit, from my screenshots that I've seen or I've seen people using it, is a bit janky at the moment. But I wish them all the world luck in the world in relation to like in their future, because definitely I agree with their end goals. So moving on to the next article, which is, we now have 2,663 games working with Proton, according to the website protondb.com. And actually, I've just clicked through, and it allows you to sign in with your Steam ID if you want, which I've just done. So I'm scrolling through my own here, and essentially it just says, okay, we know what games you've purchased. So if you sign in with your Steam ID, and then it will give you a breakdown, like, this game is garbage, doesn't work on Proton, ignore it, or this game is absolutely platinum, or this game is gold. Like, in other words, it'll work effectively, but like may need some minor tweaks here or there, or some slight graphical glitches. So it gives you a breakdown if you're happy with logging in with your Steam ID in relation into the Proton DB webpage. Or if you don't want to sign in and you just want to look up specific games, it does have a search, so you can search for a specific game in using their search box, and then it will tell you if it's a gold supported, platinum supported, or anything in between, bronze or complete garbage.
Yeah, it's obviously it's meant to be similar to the Wine DB, right? It's
yes, like an idea, yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool that they have their own, a company or like companion to that. It's pretty sweet, like, when you think about it. All this is really cool, like that. Like, I wonder if people just take a step back and just think about just what Valve have done here. It's incredible, really. Like, this was a huge pain point for anyone thinking about going to Linux. The first thing people would say in our generation anyway was, oh, you can't play games. Steam did start releasing Linux specific titles, but of course, as we know, that was developer dependent if they wanted to develop the title for Linux. But now that just removes a huge blocker. Like, it's so cool. Like, and 2,600 games. Like, what? like this is bananas. Like, so I think now is a critical time for people to really start, like, annoying people about Linux. Like, just get right in their face. Like, just buy them a laptop and put Linux on. No, don't do that. Yeah, but
you could be that little annoying kid in like on a really loud car journeys. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Have you tried Linux yet? Have you tried Linux yet? Have you tried Linux yet?
I was actually talking to someone the other day who was a bit of a Mac obsessive, and they were asking me for tips on Linux and that kind of thing, and I was like, I was giving them some suggestions and whatnot, and I mentioned the Steam thing, like the Proton or Steam Play, and they like that was a major selling point right there. Like, not even a big gamer kind of person, but just like they were more interested in content creation and that sort of thing. So it was giving them like recommendations of video editors and, you know, audio workstations, whatnot. But like, yeah, the gaming thing is massive, and 2,600 games, holy moly.
I mean, as I said, I'm logged into my own personal profile here, so I can literally read out some of them. I mean, Crysis 2 Maximum Edition is coming up as gold compatible for me.
So that's
Batman Arkham Origins is coming up as gold. Command and Conquer 3 Typerian Wars is coming up as platinum. Doom, the new 2016 Doom, is coming up as gold compatible.
I was just playing Doom last week. Yeah, it's so much fun. It's like, but the graphics are amazing. Like, it runs flawlessly. It crashed 3 times, but you know, that's fine. Like, I was playing it for hours. I didn't even mind the crashes so much. It just froze. So I just do a shift tab, close it down, open it back up, and it's working again for 2 or 3 hours. Like, and it's like fast paced, crazy game. So it was a nice bit of catharsis, but,
Grand Theft Auto San Andreas gold, Grand Theft Auto Vice City gold, Hitman 2 Silent Assassin is coming up as platinum, BioShock is coming up as silver. I mean, the list goes on. It's like, this is just absolutely fucking incredible as far as I'm concerned. Just going down through my own games list where it gives you the personalized one. Age of Empires 2 HD edition is coming up with silver, and I can attest that I've booted it up and it works pretty good. Doom 3 BFG edition coming up as silver. I mean, as I said, it for people who like video games, this is just absolutely fucking amazing. It's just an incredible time. I mean, that was the whole thing of as many things that is keeping people back on Windows. It's, oh, we're gamers, like we need Windows, and we have to put up with the fact that Windows will do an update and will in the middle of you gaming, and it's like, oh, like, we need to reboot now, but I'm in the middle of a game. No, we need to reboot now. So they put up with all this shit in order to say, oh, but Windows is the gaming operating system. Yeah, this is an absolute fucking game changer as far as I'm concerned. Go out and spread the word, people. And spread the word. That
another thing is, like, this is only the beginning as well. Like, yeah. It only came out a few weeks ago. So, like, we're talking game changing this early. I mean, imagine when it's like perfected and worked on for months and months, and you know, publishers start to get interested and stuff. Like, this could lead to all sorts of crazy shit. Like, it's really good news.
I think it integrates DSVK, which is the DirectX to Vulkan translation layer. So, and I think game developers have approached Valve and say, this new Steam Play thing, how do we get our game compatible with it? And Valve have just said, make your game compatible with Vulkan, and it pretty much just works. It might be like 80 or 90% there. You might have to do some minor tweaks, but pretty much just make your game compatible with Vulkan, and you're pretty much there. And I think even if your game is on DirectX, there is the DSVK or DirectX to Vulkan translation layer, as well as the whole wine shenanigans. So yeah, definitely this is something that gets me really excited. So the next thing, which is a big one, is our rant on desktop environments, which I kind of teased at the start of this podcast. So desktop environments, I'll explain it to very simply. Desktop environments are free for people who don't know. Is essentially Linux can run as completely headless, without any graphical interface whatsoever. You can run it on a Raspberry Pi and just have it sitting in the corner. And if you want to interact with that, then you SSH and it's all command line. It can run perfectly happy there. but it will also run as your main desktop operating system. Now, so the desktop environments is how the desktop is how your operating system looks and how you're able to interact with it. And there's different ones. There's ones that look like Windows, if you're familiar with the Windows look and things, and there's things that look like Mac operating system, the Mac OS, if you're more familiar with the Mac, the way the Mac is laid out. But some really good ones. KDE is what I'm running at the moment, and it came out with quite a while ago, I think, a version, but the latest version. But it's been running smooth with me. So
I've always been astonished by just how many different desktop environments and window managers are there. Just another bit of an explainer. A desktop environment is like the whole thing, which also lets you set your sound and to make your keyboard work, and might have widgets for your network and other things. A window manager is much simpler. It's just basically the layout of the windows on the desktop and some other functionality. So I'm just astonished of how much of that stuff is available for Linux. If you think about it, there are not that many desktop Linux users, but we pretty much have a desktop environment or a Windows manager for every single one of them. I like KDE as well because of the way you can customize it. It gives you options because it lets you set pretty much anything. So it satisfies my inner geek, but unlike something like, say, a tiling window manager, like, say, i3, where everything is done via keyboard, and things like network management and sound management you have to take care of by yourself with installing applications and setting them up separately. KDE will give you the capabilities for that as well, and if you need some basic tiling, KDE can do that as well, and a lot of keyboard shortcut availability. So even though right now I'm recording on a Mate desktop, that's because that's my wife's preference, but I really, really prefer KDE as well. Shane?
On the desktop side of things, I am using Linux Mint Cinnamon, and then on the little laptop, I have Ubuntu Mate. Now I've used quite a few over the years. I've used like LXDE, XFCE, I've used GNOME several times. Never really KDE. I used it maybe once or maybe twice in the past, but it was never for me. I just kind of used it once and then just thought, nah, because I don't know, it was never really my kind of thing. However, I'm willing to give it a try again, because I did see it actually on your mic or Mike on your laptop, Mike. I did see it, and it does look a lot different to how it did when I was using it. So I'm for sure going to give it another whirl.
That could have been KDE.
How long ago?
And in my opinion, I'm sure Mike will disagree with me. In my opinion, KDE 4 was terrible. So it's only KDE 5 that I'm starting to see the light, the KDE light, as it is.
No, I'm not actually a long-time KDE user. I've been using KDE full-time for about, now almost a year, I think. But I tried KDE 3.5 a long time ago. That was Ubuntu 8.10 or something.
That was awful.
That was awful, but then again, that was the time of Windows XP and Windows Vista, so comparatively it was still better than that, although GNOME back then basically that had all the advantages even over the KDE 3.5.
GNOME 2, that was the
KDE 4. Yeah, KDE 4, I tried using it numerous times, and then something would stop working, but it wouldn't be something easy. Mm-hmm. It would be suddenly you don't have sound, or suddenly all the interface just changes and something crashes and you don't have graphical user interface. That kind of thing always threw me off a little bit. That doesn't happen in KDE anymore. I've tried other things. I've tried cinnamon, for example, and I know you guys like it. I just can't. I don't like it for some reason. I don't even know why. It's probably just the aesthetics. What do you guys like
For me,
about it so much?
its familiarity. It was kind of just like slipping into an old pair of slippers to just see from me, like everything's laid out exactly where I know it would be. And for me, it reflects the user interface of what I referred to as peak Windows, which for me was Windows 7. I think they've gone back a bit when it comes to Windows 10 in terms of design. I mean, I'm sure it has the modern interfaces and everything's flat, which is the way the design is going at the moment. But it's just the annoying things. But they're when you open up the start menu, there's all of these pop up ads. It's like, would you like to try Xbox? Would you like to try Skype? Would you? No, fuck off. I want to use my computer. So for me, the peak design was for Windows 7, and for people who are of a similar view to myself, as in Windows 7 is exactly what they consider the peak design, or maybe not peak design, but it's just what they're most familiar with. In other words, how their brain works. In other words, when they go looking around a computer and say, oh, that's where that is. Oh, that's where that is. That's where that is. And it's just familiar. Then Cinnamon for me is like Windows 7 interface, but on Linux.
Yeah, like, I agree. Cinnamon, I don't know, it's not that it reminds me of X, Y, or Z, but it's just that it stays out of my way. It doesn't get in my way. That's all I ask of a desktop environment, is that it doesn't throw shit at me that I don't want it to. So with the laptop, I think I was talking to you guys about this before. Like, I was thinking of going with a different DE on the laptop, so I was looking into LXQT. So haven't tried it yet, but I don't know. What do you think? Is that a good idea, bad idea?
It does look promising, and there is a video which we'll include in the show notes where it's essentially showcasing LXQT, which is coming out on. Is it currently out? It's not even coming out. It's currently out with Ubuntu 18.10. So it's kind of like KDE because it's based on Qt, but it's more slim, and you bring up it's more traditional menu, as in you bring it up and there's a kind of a search, and there's anyway. Mike, you want to say something?
Just give us the specs of your laptop, Shane, maybe, so that we know.
Well, it's I don't know. It's an Entroware Apollo. It's got like some.
Is it like a Celeron processor or something?
No, Atom processor, Intel Atom, okay. 2.2 gigahertz or something like that. 3 maybe, could be wrong. RAM.
I
would give Ubuntu a go.
Is that why you want to use Ubuntu, because it's low? It's meant to have a low footprint.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, Mate actually works quite well. Like, I never notice any usability problems or anything like that. But like, just the fan noise gets a bit annoying.
Yeah, I would actually want to know how Ubuntu would run on that, because I think they were trying KDE and Ubuntu, and I don't know, maybe we've mentioned it on some previous episode as well. It kind of KDE and Ubuntu are not miles apart in kind of heaviness and footprint anymore. It was very similar. On the Ubuntu side of things, I've tried it a few times before, and I've always found that it's a bit too basic for what I need. So I don't know if that's still the case, but say the file explorer, instead of you being able to click onto the path, you would have to type the path in, even though there would be a compilation. But basically, it would just be the window, like a browser window, where you just type in the path. And there were some other things that were a bit too stripped down for my liking.
Yeah, that sounds proper low tech. Yeah, maybe not.
Well, no, I don't want to dissuade you. Obviously, that's give it a shot. It would be interesting to know. And obviously, it's been a while since I tried it, so I'm sure they've been developing on it quite a lot, especially since Ubuntu decided to take it as their own, that they switched from
LXD,
what was it before?
which GTK based. I agree with you. When it was LXD, it was kind of like it's kind of Windows XP era design, but kind of slightly worse. But yeah, LXQT does look pretty good. I'm just noticing now that the link that I included next to LXQT actually links to the GNOME showcase video, so I'll update that before it goes into the show notes. But yeah, the video that I will put in the show notes does showcase LXQT quite well, including
I'm checking out some screenshots
including
here,
there. I think you can get a nice compositor. So if, for example, the benefits of a compositor is you can have something that's flat, that doesn't have any fancy transitions or any fancy graphics, you can have the compositor off if you just want something that's responsive, or maybe are on slightly older or slightly underpowered hardware. But if you're thinking, I have the resources to spare and I want the transparency, or I want these nice smooth transitions or something, you can turn the compositor on. And with the compositor on, which I believe they do show in the video that will be in the show notes, you can see the nice transparency of the menu. You can see the as you're moving windows around, like the window becomes transparent and that sort of thing. Just little niceties like that. But again, I suppose it's supposed to be on a simpler user interface, maybe slightly better resource management, maybe could slightly run better. But as Mike was saying, KD5 itself is actually becoming quite good at running on more restricted hardware or more underpowered hardware.
And at the same time, I think the Ubuntu project basically started saying that no, we are no longer the project or the distro for old hardware. They want to compete in the major space, for normal, in quotes, hardware.
I think they're
well,
trying to go with a hybrid approach, because I think they did do is say, I heard this on a podcast, and the name escapes me at the moment, but I did hear that the Ubuntu team are saying they're kind of bridging the gap, where they don't want to be just the old hardware desktop environment. They want some of the fancy transitions, and they want some of the fancy graphics, but also they don't want to alienate their community. So I believe what they did was they reached out and said, I know there's a growing trend of dropping the 32-bit builds of desktop environments. I think regular Ubuntu doesn't support 32-bit builds anymore. I think the Ubuntu team are saying, listen, reach out to the community, said, is there demand for 32-bit builds? And if there is, then we need your guys' help with testing. Because obviously if you demand 32-bit builds, then you have 32-bit hardware. So I think they have reached out and said, listen, if you do want us to keep making 32-bit builds, then you're going to have to help us with the testing. And I believe the community has been quite positive with that and said, I don't know specific examples, but I believe the community has reacted positively to that and said, we do want 32-bit builds, but we're happy to help you test your latest development branch or whatever. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, well, one thing that if we are finished discussing LXQT,
I think this is just a general chat.
Thinking,
I think we can bounce in between the
just
different desktop environments as we want.
Now, as I was going through it in my head, I just realized there's one thing that we haven't mentioned, and that's GNOME.
Oh, yeah,
and
true.
It's quite an omission.
There's
You
a
guys
reason
like
for that.
Okay, I'll put my hands on my cards on the table. I have tried GNOME in the past, and for me, it's not that I actively hate it. I could see myself using it, but it's just small niggling things here and there where I'm like, I kind of preferred the way something else did that, or I kind of preferred something like nickel things that kind of eat into the back of my mind. And one of the textbook examples, I'm sure there's more if I sit down and think about it, but the one that jumps out to me at the moment is the support for legacy icons. In other words, if Dropbox or whatever cloud syncing software that you use, I'm using pCloud at the moment, but it also has one of those icons, or Skype, if you have, the little Skype icon down on your tray. GNOME completely hates those and says, this is wrong. We're going to rebel against this. So I think they left it up. There was a guy who was the GNOME extensions, and there was a guy who says, listen, a GNOME proper or the GNOME development team is not going to support this, so I'm going to build an extension that adds in the support. And I think GNOME went in the direction and completely broke whatever API or whatever he was using in order to support it, and he just essentially just, in a nice way, but essentially just rage quit and just said, listen, they're making it virtually impossible for me to support this, so it's taking too much my time, so I'm essentially just saying there's going to be no more development of this. I think it was the extension was called Top Icons Plus or something like that, and I think he just essentially said, listen, they've made it so that it's essentially broken the way the previous way that I was using it, was integrating it, is the GNOME development team essentially broke it. So sorry guys, I'm just quitting, which is unfortunate, which has led to forks of GNOME. Cinnamon is actually a very early fork of GNOME. When GTK 3 first came out, very early days of the new GTK 3 or GNOME shell, Cinnamon is a very early fork of GNOME, but they've kind of gone off in their own direction. Something that's called Budgie is a more recent fork of GNOME, so it's kind of closer to GNOME 3 in terms of the way it looks and the way it reacts to stimulus and so on, but it's just the layout of it. Budgie for me is more Windows 10 looking, as in it has the notification shade that kind of pulls in from the side, just like Windows 10 does if you've ever used Windows 10. It has the menu bar and the taskbar at the top with a menu, but you can very easily move that down to the bottom if you're more familiar with Windows 10. So if you like Windows 7, I say go with Cinnamon, and if you like Windows 10, go with Budgie. But the very, very simplistic approach to it.
Yeah, I actually like certain aspects of GNOME. I like to when you set it up so that you press the super key and you get overview of all your windows, and if you start typing, you get all your applications or your application search. That is something that I think they figured out how to do, and no one else has it as good. The rest of things, I mean, always in the past, I started using it, and then suddenly I would hit the no, you can't do that wall. Something stupid, like I'd like to remap my keys in a special way. And there I ended up basically just rewriting config files for something, or using G settings, which I don't think I should have to. And then so what occurs to me, that kind of desktop probably isn't for me, and it's interesting because it's used on Ubuntu as a default with certain customization. So obviously is the most I'd imagine is the most used Linux desktop environment because it just comes by default and default rules supreme. So it and I don't really, apart from like us Linux geeks, I don't really hear people complaining about it. I work with a lot of developers who use Linux, and they use Ubuntu and they use GNOME, and they seem to be happy with it.
Just on that point, when I'm shitting on GNOME, I'm shitting on stock GNOME, as in if you bring up Fedora or something that which is very loyal to stock GNOME, because I think Red Hat actually are the Red Hat employees are the main developers of GNOME, or the GNOME environment. It's stock GNOME that I'm shitting on. And even though Ubuntu now since 17.10, I believe, so the last 3 versions have shipped with GNOME by default, Ubuntu has done their own customized tweaks, and in my view have kind of greatly sanded down the rough edges of stock GNOME. So I'm not shitting on the Ubuntu tailorization of GNOME. I believe that they, in my opinion, they've greatly improved upon stock GNOME. So when I'm shitting on, just to clarify, when I'm shitting on GNOME, it is stock GNOME and not the Ubuntu version of it, because the Ubuntu version of it, they've themed it with the very latest Yarrow theme. I think what they used to be called the community theme. Looks absolutely beautiful. And little things, I believe they have added in their own hack or something like that in order to have those icons that I was talking about. I believe that Ubuntu stock using the GNOME environment, I believe they do support those icons, whereas stock GNOME, as I said, don't support it to such an extent that the developer who was integrating it ended up rage quitting. So I think it's the case of GNOME is like, our way's best, and if you don't like it, then fuck off. I'm sure they're not that aggressive about it, but that seems to be the direction that they seem to be going in. Whereas Ubuntu was like, no, these people are actually desktop Linux users. Like, they actually like some of these nice things, niceties. I think GNOME, the GNOME developers is like, we're writing this for a workstation. Why would you need these extra frills and bits on the side? Because I said they're primarily they're Red Hat employees, and primarily they're developing for Fedora. So Fedora is kind of the showcase of stock GNOME, and Fedora is kind of a workstation Linux build or Linux desktop environment. Any of you guys have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think, Shane, you had strong opinion about GNOME.
No, I wouldn't call it a strong opinion, but I think there was a bit of a change in the aesthetic of GNOME and how they did things between versions 2 and 3, and it wasn't for me, basically. Like, it just became too busy. Like, yeah, it just became too fiddly and busy. Like, I don't want like special gestures. I want it, like, if I want gestures and I want special panes and I want, all sorts of cool like stuff, I'll do that myself. That's the point of all this. Like, if I want to add in a cool feature or something to improve the usability of it, like, I will add that. Like, I want, this probably just hinges on what I want from a DE, basically. I want something very clean, very simple. Doesn't get in my way. Everything I need is where it should be, easily accessible, etc. Like, simple stuff. But I just didn't get that from more recent versions of GNOME. I found like it was unintuitive to me. I just didn't, like, visually it looked nice, but just in terms of usability, it just wasn't my cup of tea. That's all.
I think that's a good question. The question, what do we actually want from a desktop environment? I mean, for me, it's kind of simple, if not easy. It's definitely straightforward. I want it to look the way I like things looking, and I want it to be very much configurable. I want it to have a lot of keyboard shortcuts because I use the keyboard a lot, but I also want to be able to click on things, because when I stop using the keyboard and keep hold of the mouse, I want to be able to do that as well. So I want it to be very much, what's the word, like, not general, but I want it to be very flexible, or like, it can do many things. I want I don't want something that's very narrow focused, like GNOME seems to be, or tiling window manager would be.
I think just when Shane was talking there, it was the whole thing of GNOME 2 and the transition to GNOME 3 is a lot of people when GNOME 3 first came out, which is I should say that GNOME 3 is like GTK 3, which is the thing that GNOME 3 GNOME shell is based off, but it's GNOME shell is what when we're referring to GNOME, we're usually referring to GNOME shell. When that first came out, several people regaled in horror, and I think or recoiled in horror, I should say, and quite rightly so. Mate is the spiritual successor to GNOME 2. So if you're familiar with GNOME 2 and you like the way GNOME 2 reacts to things, Mate is the spiritual successor to that. In other words, it is laid out and works exactly how you expect Mate or GNOME 2 to work, except Mate has actually been completely rewritten on the back end, so it actually is modern and it supports GTK3 teams and GTK3 back end. So it's, Mate is 100% GTK3 compatible, but it just is the spiritual successor to GNOME 2, so it reacts the exact same way as you expect GNOME 2 to react. Another one that we don't seem to have talked about much is XFCE. XFCE, I in my view, is kind of the Debian stable of desktop environments, as in it's solid, it's dependable, it doesn't change much. But if that's all you want, in other words, if you want a computer that every time you boot it up, it looks the exact same, it reacts the exact same, nothing's ever going to change with it in a good way, as in it's solid, dependable. You will know exactly where things are. Nothing will drastically change. I'm sure there will be changes implemented, but for me, Joe Resington is quite a fan of XFCE for those reasons. Of it just works, and it works the exact same way that I expect it to work.
Yeah, I've tried Ubuntu recently for a very little moment, and it looked crisp. That's all I can say about it. It was good old XFCE, but that was the thing about it. It didn't look too dated, so I tried it thinking, well, this is going to be like trip back to 2009. But no, I think if you want stability and if you want, as you said, things that don't change, then absolutely XFCE is a very good contestant. Any one of you tried Pantheon, or the thing that runs on elementary OS basically?
I've shied away from elementary OS. I've never actually tried it.
I have. It looks. Again, it's not my kind of a look, but it looks crisps. Yeah, it looks like crisps. It looks crisp.
It's essentially the Tato desktop
it works. It is the Tato desktop environment. Yeah, it looks great. It uses the Mac paradigm. They might not like people saying it, but it works a bit like a Mac. But I've heard somewhere an interview with, or basically one of the developers was saying something somewhere that their philosophy is that a desktop environment shouldn't let users make engineering decision. Say, whereas KDE, you can configure it however you want. XFCE the same.
Mate, no, take your pick. But yeah.
Pantheon or elementary OS won't let you do the configurations to that same amount, because they just think, no, you shouldn't have to do this. This is a working product, and it's definitely an interesting experience, not only because of the desktop environment, but also because of the other aspect of the project. They are basically making a product, and it's nice to see that they are actually making something that's a bit more monolithic or a bit more kind of put together, and it's not. It's very opinionated, but it's an interesting experience to use it.
I'm only going from any videos that I've seen. It does. I mean, the design is top notch. It looks very aesthetically pleasing. But again, it's the kind of way of this. We've tailored it to the way we think it should work. And if you're the kind of person who says, I like the look, but I want to change it to a dark theme, or I want to change the icons, or I want to tweak it here and there, or I want to move the top bar to the bottom, whereas by default is on the top or whatever. Pantheon is not for you, because it's the case of we have designed it in such a way, and it's custom tailored for the way that, in other words, everything reacts the way it's supposed to react. It's not saying that they don't have flair, they don't have polish. They do say that in order to be visually distinctive, if an application developer wants to put their own unique style, in other words, if they say, "Oh, my icon or my app is very red heavy. I use the color red in my app." They're like, "Yeah, go right ahead." It doesn't necessarily have to be the exact UI or the exact theming or color scheme that the base operating system has to have. So in other words, you can add your own flair, but it'll be self-contained within the application itself, rather than developing an application said we're going to retheme the entire Pantheon. It's kind of the case of it's our way or the highway in that sense.
Isn't that what GNOME is basically trying to be now? Like, didn't they beat GNOME in their own game?
I heard about that. Yeah, the GNOME developers are saying that theming is broken, and we shouldn't be able to theme at all. And again, I think this is sort of getting around to what I alluded to earlier, where they're the case of it's a workstation. Why do you want to theme it? It's supposed to work exactly. I mean, I forget what it begins with A. Adaptica or something, whatever.
Adwaita.
In my mind, is absolutely god awful. It reminds me of like Windows 2000, but slightly better. But
is that just the icon theme, the Adwaita, or is it the whole shell theme as well?
I think they've slightly got better with their icons, but it's a case of just making it less ugly. But it's still
those like big. Is it still those big, like, cartoony, rotten-looking icons? Like, is that what you're talking about here?
Yeah, I don't think they changed much from the GNOME 2 days, to be honest. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, they look very dated.
I think it's tough to find nice-looking system icons in any Linux distribution.
KDE.
Maybe.
The default in KDE, which is KDE Breeze, is actually pretty good. And actually the fact that they have, by default, they support KDE Dark as well. I like my dark themes.
Or I think the new mix icons, the Papyrus icons are great as well.
Those are the ones
I think those work on GNOME. So there are plenty of people making plenty, and by plenty I mean at least 5 really good icon sets that are complete, at least as far as I can tell. So if the GNOME project wanted to, they can definitely choose different icons. And I think maybe isn't Adwaita was default on no, that's Menta was default on Mate, but they are, I think, similar. It's like the little battery with the 2-prong plug and the bar Wi-Fi. Yeah, that's, I don't know.
What I was doing was see if I remind myself of that freaking god awful theme. I was trying to Google in the background, but I wasn't doing it quick enough. Oh yeah, there it is. Oh god, it's awful. Anyway, yeah, moving on. So I think we're at the stage where you guys describe your boners to me.
Oh, fantastic.
So, Mike, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been traveling, and I had a massive erection when I was traveling, which was kind of inappropriate, but people got over it eventually. Basically, the way we publish this podcast is that everything is done over SSH, at least after obviously editing it's edited, and then I run some programs and I SSH, and I need to SSH into DigitalOcean droplet to flick the switch, metaphorically speaking, so that to update the RSS feeds and stuff. Now, I didn't want to take my laptop with me, and I managed to do everything I needed to do on Termux for Android, which is a terminal for Android, and I have a great dislike for Android, but Termux is amazing. Basically, it lets me SSH into the box, write a simple shell script that I needed. I could install Vim locally, so that, and obviously when I SSH, Vim was already installed on the box, and it provides all the things that are missing from your normal keyboard. So if you have control key emulation, and you can emulate escape and alt and other keys as well. So I could use Vim to edit the RSS feed when I needed to, and run some shell script, and everything worked out fine. So yeah, Termux I can only recommend if you need to do some shell work from
I've used
Android.
it myself in the past.
Shane, LMMS.
LMMS, yes, Linux Multimedia.
Oh, you've been sending picture messages.
Studio. Yeah, I recently I actually installed it many years ago and had to play around with it, and it actually hasn't changed much since then. It's vastly improved though, from what I hear, but it had some stability issues and whatnot, and still does, as all sound stuff tends to have. And because Linux being the way it is, you have about 3 or 4 different choices for your audio subsystem in Linux, which is a bit of a pain sometimes. But
there's Pulse,
okay.
all sorts of
fucking Pulse audio. You've got Jack. You've got what's the other one? Escapes me. What the hell is that? ALSA. That's the one.
ALSA.
Yeah, I don't know what any of that means. I'm going to be honest. I don't understand the difference. So, and I don't really want to know. But anyway, LMMS is a really cool music creation program. So you can create like synthesizer sounds, and you can make beats and melodies and drum patterns, and it's really fully featured. Like it's crazy. It's got a kind of a cool, nifty, old school feel to it as well. Like, it doesn't look super modern, but it doesn't look super old either. Like, and it's got some nifty UI features that just look really cool. So yeah, I was kind of having a play around with that, making some really awful atonal music that doesn't sound very good, and it was really good.
So you can get your FL Studio on, essentially.
For sure, all of it. But like, I was. For me, like, obviously it brought back the fun and the creation element of Linux, because that's what I loved about it to begin with. The fact that you could get like a sort of a program that's not quite the same as the proprietary or commercial equivalent, but still did a lot of the same things, but maybe had a few rough edges here and there. Like, that's really what attracted me to Linux, was that I could do proprietary things without the proprietary. Mm-hmm. So, instead of fucking paying for an Adobe Creative Studio subscription, which is insane money, I can use Kden Live on Linux. I can use, like, for video editing, or Shotcut, which is pretty good. I had a go at that the other day. LMMS, Audacity, the list goes on. There's all sorts of creative programs in Linux nowadays that I can sink my teeth into without having to pay for subscriptions to X, Y, or Z. But another aspect of that is, if I do eventually want to go down that route of paying for these proprietary programs, because I'm missing feature X, Y, or Z that is kind of important. And, I can get experience with the discipline using that program in Linux. So it's a nice little gateway drug, essentially. So it's good for people with limited income who want to create music or make movies or, do some sort of creative endeavor. Inkscape for design, things like that. They can just install that shit on Linux. They can get their feet wet, and then they can make a decision if they want to go out and pay for a proprietary program.
Ardura is supposed to be very good as well, and I think there's another one begins with name escapes me at the moment, and I believe that is paid for proprietary, but it does have a Linux build, and I think the Jupiter Broadcasting crew use the one that I can't think of beginning with or Reaper. That's the one. So I believe they absolutely swear by Reaper, but that is a paid for subscription proprietary. Negative in the freedom dimension as much as that way you want to go, but it does have a Linux build, so it works natively on Linux, I believe. So getting around to my massive erection, which is Thunderbird, which is not exactly something that's, for people who are familiar with Linux, is not exactly unheard of, but from time to time we're going to pick something that may be old school, but is really useful and deserves a shout out. So Mozilla Thunderbird, again, getting back to our Mozilla discussion earlier. So Mozilla make Firefox, they also make Thunderbird. Mozilla Thunderbird is a offline email syncing program. So if you're on Windows, think of Microsoft Outlook. Windows or Mac, you think of Microsoft Outlook, and Thunderbird is available for those platforms as well. But we're on Linux, so we're going to talk about the important Linux aspects of it. Thunderbird was developed for a very long time, and then was kind of left on the back burner, and it was kind of gathering dust, gathering cobwebs. But the very latest version is based off the complete redesign, complete overhaul that Firefox has been having. So Thunderbird has been got a major kick up the ass since version 60, and I believe it's on version 63 at the moment, or thereabouts. But certainly it looks much better. It is rock solid. If you have an email provider that you've had for a very long time, and you have 2,000-3,000 emails in your backlog, Thunderbird will just chew through them in the background, no problem at all, and actually does it quite rapidly. Whereas I've had other email programs that I've tried where it grays out and crashes if you have a particularly large mailbox, but Thunderbird just seems to completely just chew through it, and it's solid, reliable, and is no longer antiquated and no longer kind of left out to pasture. Is now back to being in active development, so it looks nice and supports all your email programs, which is quite good, because what we use the IMAPs syncing for our email addresses, or various email addresses. So it's quite good to have it all centralized rather than having to check 3 separate web pages to see if you've got a new email. You can just have it, and as soon as you boot up your computer, it checks all 3 mailboxes, and you can see if you have a new email from your personal email, or even our which we have a new email address ourselves, which is the show@linuxlads.com. So if you want to get in touch with us there, so smooth segue, but that's how I check it, is using Thunderbird. So it's very good. And actually, interesting thing enough is when you're talking about Proton Mail. Now, Proton Mail before was kind of very locked down, where their philosophy was, it's our webpage or our official Android app, and that's the only way you can check our email, because we're incredibly tinfoil hat when it comes to security, and we don't we don't support IMAP by default because we believe that that is insecure and can be intercepted. So they came up with something called Proton Mail Bridge. It was released for Windows and Mac a long time ago, like 6 months to a year ago, and now they're coming out with a Proton Mail Bridge beta for Linux, and I've been trying it, and I've been using Thunderbird, and it seems to work. So happy days, and I'm using it on Arch. So. So
does Thunderbird have a mobile app?
No, unfortunately not.
No. I use Kmail on my phone and it works.
Yeah, I've used Kmail before. It's good.
Kmail.
Sorry, not Kmail. Not Kmail. No. K9. K9 Mail. Kmail is KD Mail. That's great.
K9.
K9 Mail. Yeah, I. That's when you said Kmail. That's what I heard was you're saying K9 Mail. But yeah, in the tradition of naming everything that's KD with a K, Kmail, of course they're going to call it Kmail. They also have KTorrent for their torrenting app and various other things.
Yeah, I don't have the best experience with Kmail or the whole what is it called, contact with the whole suite. They have got calendar, Kmail, and other stuff. It's called contact with a K, obviously, and I don't have the best experience with it, even though I do use it at work. But
when I was experimenting with KDE, I was like, this Kmail is installed by default. So I've used Kmail in the past, but it was the case of, okay, it was shit in the past, but I'm willing to give it another go. And since I'm installed KDE recently, I'm like, this comes by default. I might as well check it out. Signed in with my, I was experimenting with my Gmail and my Google account, my Gmail account, because effectively I don't care about that account anymore. So I was like, let's log in with my username and password, and it wasn't I eventually got it to work, but it was not the smoothest experience with Kmail. There was all sorts of pop-ups and all sorts of, do you want us to save the password using like, it wasn't just one thing, it was like 4 or 5 things of just annoying. I was like, ugh, it wasn't the most pleasant experience. But if you install Thunderbird on KDE, which I have at the moment, it's like straight away, it's like absolutely brilliant. So definitely would recommend Mozilla Thunderbird over Kmail. MailSpring is another good one, but that is an Electron app, I believe. So if you're anti-Electron, then maybe don't install MailSpring, but it does integrate with Gmail quite nicely if you're a Gmail user.
If you're anti-Electron, then you're a positron.
On the anti-Electron side, or the positron side, you have things like offline IMAP.
On the neutron side.
Yeah, you have things like offline IMAP, which is a command line script that basically just syncs all your IMAP folders, and you can use things like Alpine Mail or Mutt, which is a pain to learn, but it's an amazing command line application for email as well. So there are so many options, and Thunderbird definitely is a good one. I might actually give it a try again.
For people who are really old school, there's Claws Mail as well, which some people absolutely still swear by. I've not used it in quite a long time, but I believe it's the case of it's really old school and it works, but it has a very simple user interface. So I think if you want something a bit more modern, then maybe stay away from Claws Mail, but I believe it still works. So, and I believe it's still actively developed, but I don't think they enable new features. I think they just do bug fixes or something.
Yeah, I tried Clawsmail before, and no, it's got that dated Office kind of look that was sort of basically that's only
Office 2013 era, or Office even 2003, not 2013.
Yeah, it's for people who like working in cubicles and tucking their shirts into their trousers.
Yeah, it's an uninspiring UI design.
Hold on, now I'm gonna check the website and we will see that they've got a completely new overhaul or something, and we are shitting on them for no reason. Let me see.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Yeah, I mean, what do we have a podcast for? No, they do have a Wikipedia website, and
clause-mail.org.
Yeah.
And yes, even though it does say latest release on the 26th of August 2018, their web page looks like it was designed in 2003.
Although they do have screenshots, and no, I can report live from the seat that it still doesn't look that great. At least not to me. I mean, obviously, I should probably apologize to all people who like that kind of interface and who are happy using it. It's just not my cup of coffee.
Oh yeah, that's quite upsetting.
I think it's the case of the people who like it is, I think it's lightweight, it doesn't use a lot of resources, and it's simple, and all they want to do is a very simple UI mail syncer, and it's like they're like, what are you complaining about? All I want from my email provider is to sync my email and display my email.
Yeah,
and
that's
Linux
just
for you.
Reminds me, I think we talked last episode or 2 episodes ago about somebody who worked really hard to get, was it Mate or XFCE, looking exactly like Windows 95? I mean, yeah, all for choice, but why?
So, I think that's pretty much all the things that we had written down that we wanted to shite on about. Anything else that anybody else wants to raise, or shall we wrap it up?
I think it's a bumper episode so far.
Yeah, I mean, we've been on it for over an hour and a half, so...
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So, we have been the Linux lads, and I have been Connor.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Shane.
Thank you, guys.